Okay, today's lesson is going to focus on combining shapes and aligning them, and also using the eraser tool to erase parts of paths. So, as we've talked about before, shapes are made up of paths. So when you make a shape, inside of that shape is a path, right? All of these different shapes are constructed of these red lines, which are really just paths. Okay. So in order to move things or to change things, what we're really changing are the paths themselves. So let's talk about some different things that we're going to do with this particular file. So the first thing that we want to do is we have this object right here, the arrow that points to the right. So if we go to the layers palette, and if you don't have a layers palette, just go up here to window and select layers. And we have this layer right here, and I'm going to change layer 2, and I'm going to change this up here by just double clicking on the name, and I'm going to call this right arrow. So remember, just like in Photoshop, we should always name all of our layers. So I'm going to call the background layer blue background. Okay. So I'm going to click back on my right arrow layer, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to come up here and I'm going to copy that layer, and then I'm going to paste in place. Remember, paste in place is going to put it right on top of the previous layer. What I want to do now is simply rotate this. I could rotate it, but what I want to do really is I'm going to right click and I'm going to transform it. We're going to reflect it. So when your reflection dialog pops up, you can reflect it horizontally, which is up and down, or vertically, which is side to side. So I'm going to go ahead and reflect it vertically. We're just going to copy it now. And now if I click this down, I have left arrow. So I'm going to call this one left arrow. And I'm going to call this whole path arrows, because it has more than one thing in it. Okay. You saw how I just tipped that arrow down right here. Okay, so I have my two arrows and I have my line right here. So I want to select that line, and then I'm going to use my shift key and my down arrow. I'm going to move it down like that. And I'm going to copy, and I'm going to come up here and copy, and then paste in place again, so that way it's in the exact same spot as before. Use my shift key and up arrow, and we're going to put it right there. Now, one of the things I want to do is try to make these exactly the same apart. So I want to select that one and that one, the top and the bottom arrows. Now that I've selected them both, I can go ahead and group them together so that they're now one object, right? One group of things. So that if I move them, use my up and down keys, right? They stay together. Okay. And I can call these lines. Okay. So now what I want to do is I want to get rid of this X here in the center. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to grab my eraser tool. And I want to make sure that the thing I'm going to erase, first I'm going to get my selection tool, and I'm going to select my left arrow and my right arrow. These are the two things I want to erase. So now I'm going to grab my eraser tool, and you see when I put it on top of there, it shows me how big the eraser tool is. But I can also, one of the things I can do, I can just erase it like this. Right. You see how it gets rid of that part of the path that I wanted to erase. But if I want to erase, I just undid. Edit, undo. If I want to erase in a straight line, I hold down the Shift key, and as I go across, it holds me to a straight line. So that way, I know I'm getting a nice straight line. Not sure why I didn't erase more there. There we go. So now I can just take my eraser tool and just go straight down the path, straight up this path. Right. And there they're gone. And there we go. Now I have a nice little empty space in the middle. So now I can come down here, grab my established 2015. I can put that right there in the middle. Okay. Alright, so now what I want you to do is come up here and get your star tool, and let's make a star right there. If we want to make sure it's straight, we can, whoops, undo. Right. If I want to make sure it's straight, I can grab it, I can move it down here to the line, make sure that 2 points are both touching the line. Now I know it's straight. I can also make it a little smaller. Okay, so let's put that one there. So let's copy and then paste, move it up there, paste again, move it up there. Okay, so what I want to do is align these 3 stars. So I'm going to select all 3 of them, 1, 2, 3, and then I'm going to come over here to Properties, and I'm going to hit this Align Vertical at the top. You see how it aligns all 3 of them now across the top of the stars. Right, all 3 stars are aligned across the top. Okay. Alright, so now I want you to put your name on here. So we're going to grab this N, we're going to use that as our name. And so the first thing I want you to do is get your text tool. You're going to highlight the N, and then come over to here under Properties to Fill, and let's make that white. Okay. And now you're just going to copy and paste it as many times as you need. Right. And then kind of move it down like that. So we're just going to paste however many times you need. I need 6 of them for my name. You can put them as close as you need to. Alright. You can also use a shortcut, which is Control V. So Control V, and it pastes like that. Okay, so I'm going to take the top 3, 1, 2, 3, and we're going to go back to Properties, and we're going to align them to the top. I'm going to take the bottom 3 and align them to the bottom. Then I'm going to just get my text tool, double click on each letter. I'm going to put my caps lock down, so that way they're all capital letters. Right. Let's get this one over. Okay, so I went over here back to my layers palette, and I have all my name here together, right? And what I can do is I can go back to Properties. I can select all these, right? And I can group them together. So now when I come back to here, I have this group, and I can turn it on and off. I can know that that's my name. So I'm going to call it name. Take my caps lock off. And then these path objects right here, those are the stars, right? So since I got them all together where I want them, I can go back to Properties, hold down my Shift key, group, go back to layers, have a new group. I can call it stars. So I want to make sure my stars are aligned properly on the page, right? I can go here and you see how that pink line shows up. That shows me it is aligned in the center of the page. So I can get my arrow, my established, and my right arrow, my lines. I can grab all those, right? I can do the same thing. Oops. Make sure that they are centered on the page. Right. With text, what I can do is I can make the box bigger. There we go. Now it's centered within that. I can do the same thing here. There we go. So I can make sure everything is properly centered in the middle of my page. Now the only thing is, look, you can see my arrows kind of sticking up. So I need to make sure my arrows, oops, I should get them at the same time. Undo move, undo move. Okay, so let me grab both of my arrows by holding down the shift key. And then I'm going to use my nudge keys, right? And I'm going to nudge it down. There we go. So that way it's not sticking up like it was before. Okay. Alright, so this is what your final document should look like on lesson number 3 with your 3 stars. This is centered in the middle with a cutout. You get your 2 arrows. You have your name across the bottom.